Welcome to the Clusterf. This is the real spiritual journey. No fluff, no bypassing, pure honesty. This world is a total clusterfuck. Every Sunday, we're going to embrace the cluster and attempt to unfuck it. And we attempt to unfuck it not to perfect the world, but to better understand who we are and what the truth is. When we can sit back, observe, discuss, and analyze this giant clusterfuck, perhaps we can better understand ourselves and come up with simple solutions. Visit the website at theclusterfuck.com for links to all of the streaming and podcast platforms and social media. Now let's get ready to unfuck the cluster. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Check, check. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the clusterfuck. The first stream apparently was an audio clusterfuck. In the minute people said my voice was echoing, I knew that meant only one thing, was that I was going to have to restart the entire computer system, which is what I had to do. People are saying it sounds good, so that is it. When that happens, it's a weird thing that goes on between my microphone and the computer and this streaming system, and there's only one solution, and I apologize. It is to start the entire computer right from scratch and create a new stream. So I tried to do it as fast as I could, and I appreciate everybody returning. I'm sorry that messed up. I should know better. I should be restarting my computer more often, but it happens. Life happens. And today, of course, we are going to be doing a little bit of an art show. Guys, I took art history and art classes and art courses when I was younger. Right from high school into university, I went to the Alberta College of Art and Design. I also took art history when I was taking other courses at Camosun College and stuff like that. So I always had this obsession with art and art history. And so to kind of see the transformation of art into modern art, you kind of are like, well, why did that happen? And there's a lot of art historians out there that are probably going to give a different take than I am. And I'm only going to use a few examples. I've only had so much time, but their take is probably going to be something, I don't know, like a little less conspiratorial theory than my take is. My take is going to be about an inversion of what is good and what is real, and also a process of technology. So we are going to start off with that. And why does modern art suck? And is it intentional? What's going on here? And that'll be the first half. Then we'll do a little break because I have to put more video footage into the system. We'll do a little 5-minute break and we'll come back with Aleister Crowley. And he actually ties into this modern world of inversion. And we'll talk about how Aleister Crowley has influenced the New World Order, maybe even the tech people, and whether he intended it to end up this way or not, he is a huge influence. So we are going to go there, but a couple of announcements, of course. If you guys have not already subscribed, of course, subscribe. Click the thumbs up on this video. I hope you guys find it. We had about 6 or 7 of you in, and now not as many, but hopefully a few of you will come back. I'm going to actually put this one as a top of the channel kind of thing. Hopefully people will find it. It sometimes it takes a while when you pop up a new stream for it to register, but it seems to be up there. So everybody should be able to find it on the channel. The good news is the channel is monetized. Yes. Now it's still going through a process of verification for the membership stuff, but I put in my information. But I believe super chats and super stickers are up there so people can do that. And they still have on record super chats from before when it was monetized that they never gave me. So they don't. Anyways, okay, so they don't. I guess you have to make over $100 for them to pay you out, and then they take like 30% or something like that, and then the tax man takes something, and so you're left with crazy. Also, apparently, I can push merchandise on this channel now. I feel kind of weird about that because I'm always like, don't wear their logos. I don't know. Maybe I'll get a observe, don't absorb picture, or I don't want to put like some kind of egregore sigil charged with stuff. I don't want to preach to the choir, I guess, too much. I don't want to be like, hey, wear my clothes or else. It feels weird to me. It feels just I don't know, just beyond what I really want to do. And you see all of those channels. Candace has got her Standis mugs and all her merch. Uh, Tucker Carlson has come out with a hat saying low IQ because Trump was calling them all low IQ people, because Trump has such a vast vocabulary. And maybe Trump is a product of our system that dumbs us down, that dumbs the art down. And we'll get into the education briefly briefly, because education being dumbed down ties into the art. And we're living in this really real weird world where art is cold. So if we go back in time, art was always an expression of something more than just yourself. You go look at any of the buildings, the architecture, the paintings, even 200 years ago, and you're seeing them telling a story of humanity, telling a myth, a tale, maybe expressing something from heaven or God, or the beauty of human, the beauty of nature. There could be dark tones too, as well. But along the way, you start to see something really interesting happening. And I'm going to focus on the time from surrealism post World War One and up. We got a pair character. We got a super chat. My mom, she would have to be the first one to give me a super chat. Thank you so much, super chat. Actually it's my birthday tomorrow. I was gonna buy wine and have wine on the show, but I forgot. So I'll have to have wine next weekend. I'm working early morning, so can't be doing that. I don't drink wine very often, but I do on my birthday. But so we're gonna start with post World War One. But you can look all throughout history and see different types of art, different forms of expression. But in terms of Christian art or Western civilization art, something strange, really strange happens after World War One. And this idea of and I'm sure it's driven by technology. I make no doubts about that it's driven by technology. But it's also driven by trauma and war and this really strange need to not depict God's planet, the beauty of nature, or the glory of what humans can achieve. But you start seeing this really strange need to almost control how nature is. So instead of me drawing, uh, a perception of heaven or the moment of creation, something godly or something like that. And I get that those were promotional things as well. But instead of drawing something inspiring and divine, you get this artist idea where they take what is natural, pull it apart, and reassemble it in the way that they think that should be man controlling it, or in a bizarre way, or expressing weird, strange renditions of the female body. And what we are going to focus on first, surrealism. We're going to focus on Man Ray. We're going to focus on that kind of art, and then we will get into modern art. But it's like art becomes not just, oh, a warning or a moral warning, or an expression of God or beautiful nature or a portraiture. It becomes grotesque, body parts, nightmare, unreal, psychosis. And I would say that technology is definitely fueling that. Like, for instance, when they invented the camera, photography, obviously there would have been many artists who would no longer have a job, because you don't need to now have someone come and paint your picture or portraiture. You just take a picture or go to a photographer. And as that technology became more mainstream, it would become cheaper and more mainstream. So you can just do it with the camera. So you have all these artists looking for ways to express things in. It becomes less practical. It becomes more about me and how I see things, or political campaigning in strange ways. But it also becomes this expression after World War I of this trauma that happened to all of Europe in World War I. And we come out with surrealism. And the definition, I've given you the definition, is that they're taking apart nature and reassembling it in sort of a dreamy or a grotesque, a nightmarish, unrealistic psychosis fashion. The definition officially is that it's like a 20th century avant-garde and literary movement starting in the 1920s, which is post World War I, that sought to unlock the creative potential of the unconscious mind, inspired by Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theories. And you guys know Sigmund Freud's a fraud, right? Like, he was a fraud. He was totally covering for pedophiles with all his psychoanalysis. 100%. They found it in the archives and the documents. Nobody wants to admit it, but the guy is a creepy weirdo. So we're seeing these artists' psychosis and mental health problems pretty much being put forth on the canvas. So we're going to go into surrealism, Man Ray, Black Dahlia murders, how it creates a psychosis, serial killers, trauma. We're going to get into those sort of surrealism balls, and then we're going to show you what they're doing with art today and how it affects education, how a lot of the art is kind of dumbing us down. It's about the terror, the horror, how not how beautiful the planet is, how gracious God is, how great things are. It's about like how much shit you can throw at the wall, or how gross you can be. How much attention can you get by being gross, or in your face, or so taboo. It just switches, and it becomes an inversion of beauty. Now, we are going to go into, when you think surrealism, you're going to have to think things like Salvador Dali. But I want to show you first a couple of works of an artist who was a surrealist artist. We're going to go through his stuff again, called Man Ray. Now, here we have one of his artworks, and that is a female body cut in half. He's put in geometrical shapes. We no longer have a marble statue of a beautiful goddess. We no longer have a painting of a princess or whatever. This is what women is. It's deducing the body down. And there's a reason I show you Man Ray. First off, is because we're going to get into a very interesting serial killer situation here. We always talk about that. We've got next Sunday, we have Todd Wood coming on to talk about ritual serial killings. We're going to get into the Black Dahlia because there's an interesting story. And I recommend you go listen to the podcast Roots of Evil or look up George Hodel. And George Hodel was a doctor during right from the 20s, right into the 40s. He was a doctor. He was in Hollywood. I believe he did a lot of abortions for Hollywood people, and he was a well-known surgeon. And he had lived in a Mayan revival house that was made by Lloyd Wright, which is Franklin Lloyd Wright's son, I believe. He bought it in 1926. It was this very interesting house. And he was friends with Man Ray, the artist of this is Man Ray. This, you see what they're doing to the female form? You see the strange stuff that art has become? That kind of thing? That's Man Ray. So George Hodel is this physician. He has always wanted to be an artist. He's a failed art student. He's friends with Man Ray, who becomes this very famous American artist in surrealism, who is taking apart the female form on canvas and showing it in very strange ways. And you can look Man Ray up. Some of his works are very bizarre, but instead of seeing you as this whole human with a soul, it turns you into a product, a thing, a cube, a box, very dehumanizing, very demoralizing art. No one else would ever. Oh, Justin, we'll be dealing with Aleister Crowley in the second half, so stick around. I've got an agenda here. I've got a little outline here, so we are going to get to Aleister Crowley. If you can't stick around, come back later, watch it and in the second half. But we're going to be talking about Aleister Crowley, and I will connect the dots for you then. Okay, so Man Ray, surrealism, putting form in a box, treating people like things. And of course, this comes out of the most horrendous war that mankind had seen at that time. World War I was a very different war than any war that had been fought before. We're not going to get into my whole conspiracy that all wars are planned and fought and owned, but both sides are owned by the bankers. We won't get into that part. But there was the horrors, and out comes surrealism. This dehumanizing body pieces, it literally turning the female form into some kind of probably about an hour. The first half will be about an hour. Justin. Okay, so let's go in. We're going to actually let George Hodel's son tell you himself about his father. George Hodel's son became a crime scene or kind of cop. He investigated murders with the LAPD, and upon his investigations of things, he learned that his father was actually a suspect in the Black Dahlia murders. We're going to go over what the Black Dahlia murders was and why I think they're linked to this depraved art that starts coming out. Now, not all of surrealism, we're not saying like Man Ray was a serial killer or anything like that. We're saying there's a connection, and we'll show it. We're going to get George Hodel's son. I think his name is George too. And he's going to tell you all about his suspicions with his father.
So my father, the last 10 years of his life, and there's no way. I said, I know Dad was, had some sex problems, and, I believe the incest. But murder, no way.
Steve Hodel is a retired LAPD homicide detective. His father, Dr. George Hodel, was a suspect in the Black Dahlia case. One of his daughters, Tamar, also accused him of sexual abuse. George was tried and acquitted in the highly publicized case. But Steve didn't know this until he struck up a conversation with her after their father died in 1999.
I started talking with Tamar, my half-sister, who I hadn't really spoken to in about 50 years. And she basically comes out of nowhere in our phone conversation, says, well, you know, our dad was a suspect in the Black Dahlia murder. And I'm saying, what are you talking about, Tamar? Where the hell is this coming from? And she says, well, he didn't do it, but he was a suspect.
14 years into retirement, Steve started researching Black Dahlia, initially to vindicate his dad. Once he saw the evidence mounting, it became hard for him to ignore.
I found actual original receipts for 50-pound sacks of cement during the week that she was murdered at the house, and they were at the crime scene. So we've got the physical evidence connecting. But one of the most important things are the secret DA tapes, where they bugged the house for 6 weeks and got it actually tape recorded his confessions to the murder of his secretary, to the Black Dahlia murder, and to payoffs to law enforcement, to performing abortions. All of this was on tape and hidden away in the DA's office.
Steve says the case was tight, and authorities were literally looking for him to lock him up. Before they could get the chance, George skipped town in 1950 and started another life and family in the Philippines. 40 years later, he'd leave Manila and move back to the U.S. Steve says his family is split on George's involvement in the case.
There's 11 children by 5 different women, so mostly they're on board. He married a Filipina when he left the country, and had 4 children there. They're not on board. They're like, no way that our father could be a serial killer.
Steve has written several books combining what the FBI and LAPD found with the evidence he continues to come across.
This was all sub rosa on my part, secret, and then I presented it in secret to a head active DA, Steve Kay, who was co-counsel on the Charles Manson case. And he reviewed it for like 4 months and said, you know, I got a tough filing policy, but, you know, I would file one count of murder on your father were he alive.
Okay, so that was a little explanation from Steve Hodel. That's George Hodel's son. He had several children. Now George Hodel, like I told you, was in with Man Ray. Man Ray would have been in that house. He would have visited the that sort of what do you call it? The Lloyd Wright house. It was a Mayan revival, very unique house. Looked like a Mayan temple. This doctor owned it, and the LA police were actually recording him, tapping him, wiretapping his house. So you're thinking, well, why didn't they do anything? I think he had an in with the LA police. He did flee. I think he got a tip off like, hey, get out of here and hit the road. You know, hit the road, because remember, this guy likely did abortions for Hollywood actresses in the Hollywood studios. So not legal, totally illegal. And this whole house if you go follow up on this case with Steve Hodel, there's a very good podcast on it called Roots of Darkness? It's something like that. He had a whole surgical theater, I believe, down in the basement in the house. And so they were highly suspicious of him. And I know you're going, okay, Melissa, skip to the point. Like, what's the whole deal? Why does Man Ray have anything to do with this? Well, George Hodel had always wanted to be an artist, and he loved Man Ray. And so here we have, I'm going to remind you of Man Ray. The torso chopped in half, the lips, the mouth. And now this is graphic. I'm going to warn you. I'm going to show you the crime scene of the Black Dahlia. And you're going to see that this has been surgically done. It was washed. It was cleaned. It was secondary location. You can tell. And you're going to see the condition of the body and how it looks like a mad surgeon tried to do surrealism art. So here is the first one. That is the torso, how it was found, cut in half. There she is under the blanket. That is the torso. And this is really graphic and close up. This next picture of the face mimicking the mouth that I showed you of the Man Ray in the sky. And here is Elizabeth alive, and there she is gone. That is the graphicness of this murder. And it has long been stated that this murder, an inversion of anything good, was mimicking the surrealism style of Man Ray. And George Hodel goes into this in depth, talking about, and he's convinced it is his father. And this isn't an amateur. This is a man who worked with the LA police. It's ironic that he would go and work with the LA police department in the future when his father was probably likely the number one suspect of the Black Dahlia murders. It's this strange inversion. And look, Elizabeth Short. Is Elizabeth Short? No, that's sorry, I'm thinking about someone else. Elizabeth Short's the girl that was kidnapped here in Utah. The Black Dahlia, she was tortured alive, probably for hours. They know like she was probably tortured, and a lot of this mutilation happened when she was alive. And then they've done away with her and performed her into like an art. It's almost like the Joker, like disfiguring people. This idea that art has to be painful, that art has to be depraved, that you have to go to these crazy depths of darkness. And this is in the culture now. It's everywhere. And you can see it. Look up different aspects of surrealism art. Some are lighter than others. We're going to take a look at some other video footage of surrealism art. We're gonna tap into this one. There's been many of these balls, surrealism balls. The most famous one is the Rothschild's ball. This is another one. There's been many of these surrealism balls that people consider novel, but they are inverted. They're meant to be gross and shocking, and you can see from the 20s on art getting really creepy. I'm gonna have to read this one too because it's just music. Says guests were asked to come in costumes inspired by their dream. Zoo, this is Salvador Dali. Gala hosted the dinner from the comfort of a giant bed. Monkeys roamed the ballroom. They wanted giraffes, but the zoo said no. The guests included Alfred Hitchcock, Bing Crosby, and Bob Hope. So this is Hollywood. Hollywood is deep into a lot of this really strange art. Remember, George Hodel served Hollywood. He wasn't just, your regular physician. He wasn't, your normal GP. He was making lots of money, and I'm sure his money line came from Hollywood, doing abortions, handling promiscuous actresses who were having sex to get roles or giving sexual favors, or just men and women who were having lots of really crazy sex, and that's what they were doing with the babies. So there it is. Eating from shoes. Frogs jumping off of platters. Okay, so you can look up pictures of the Rothschild's ball. The Rothschild's ball had just really bizarreness, and it's just an expression of their really occultic beliefs. Well, he was probably able to get rid of it due to having blackmail towards Hollywood. Well, he fled. He went to the Philippines. Hodel went to the Philippines and came back when things quieted down. And I would suspect that he was instructed to do so. that people were onto it. There was also other murders called the lipstick murders that might be tied. There might be several serial murders that were tied to George Hodel, but this is the most famous one, and it is directly tied to this really creepy artist community in Hollywood that, like things to be freaky and like to be novel. And yes, I know we're all into exploring our dreams, but you can see, I mean, I don't have any. All we have to do is just, I dropped my paper, just one second. Let's go to even Renaissance art, if we can.
So my father,
Yeah, so Justin says much of Dolly's art is Catholic in essence, sometimes with the gala posing as Mary. This is like, that's an inversion of Catholicism, that if you have a man twisting it up, taking body parts around and do an inversion and dressing up as Mary, that's an inversion. It's like, it's a mockery, just like when Madonna does it. It's a mockery. It would be a mockery of Catholicism. It would be. It would be considered a mockery for him to pose as Mary. It's Madonna mocks Catholicism as well, even though she's Catholic. So Renaissance art. Let me just take a look. These are, deeper meanings. You just take a look at how they're trying to perfect the human form, make things as beautiful, talk about the real essence of life. Things have a soul, and yes, I understand that technology is pushing art into different ways. But that's the whole crux of this, is what is the point of art if the whole thing is an inversion, okay? It's almost an inversion of beauty, an inversion of what good. If you have a man dressing up as Mary, he's mocking her. It's like being a tranny and saying you're a woman. You can get as offended as you want about that, but you're still doing a mocking replication of a woman. Oh, Gallo was a woman, not a man? Mhm. I thought you said he was at a gala posing as a woman. I said then he'd be mocking her. He can do Catholicism, and that's fine, but the style of the art is what's the important part. Now, a lot of these artists know how to paint realism, but the style is not realism. So society is moving in this weird, strange way, and it happens after World War II, where you get this inversion of the form and cutting a part of the body. And Man Ray, his most famous works are of that. And you can go look at many of his artistry, many of his photography. He did a lot of photography as well. You will see it is not about the woman as a person, it is the woman as pieces. And so when you are an artist like that, and maybe you're dealing with a sociopath, so sociopathy starts rising as well, by the way. And whenever you become modern, whenever you get cityscapes, whenever you get a higher population, sociopathy, psychopathy grows in the city, and it attracts people who are psychopathic, and it can make people possibly psychopathic. And from then on, you can see the growth of psychopathy and serial killers, et cetera, rate till it skyrockets in the 80s and 90s. And then it starts coming back down, which that's a different show. Actually, we discussed that on the last show. So this whole idea of this inversion of modern art and how it gets ugly. And I'm sure there might be a lot of painters who want to do something natural, but people are like, well, why would we pay for that? We have photography. I can give you a really, really, really good example of an artist who had intricate drawings. They were into the occult, and his art failed because of the invention of photography. Take a look. Hold on. I dropped my page. I'll be right back. There I am. Take a look at Austin Osman Spare's art. This is Austin Osman Spare's art. He was celebrated. Okay, we've got that. I'm missing a couple of pieces I thought I had uploaded here. We've got one more. So we have, these are just sketches that he's sketching really quickly. So this is a person who can draw the form real, right? And his some of his arts gets more intricate than that. But he's not successful. He's scraping by. And it's technology that does it. He would have had to gone into some kind of art form that was more extreme. So technology's pushing it. You get the rise of, and it's not high yet, but you can see it rising slowly into the 20th century. We've entered the modern world where humans are now starting to compete with invention. You can't see it the way you could see it today, but it's there. And it's there in the art. It's there as an expression in all forms in its infancy. Now you come to today and you see Elon Musk literally running a go-go bar with robots as waiters, and he thinks that's sexy. And it's this slow, whether they mean it or not, it's this slow motion to transhumanism. It's a start, it's a seedling, and it happens at a rapid pace post World War I. And that's, of course, we see like technology that we've never seen before. It's just this very bizarre merger. You still have style. I'm not saying these artists don't have talent, but this is the start of it. And then, so where do you go? Like when art doesn't become novel anymore, when Man Ray is not novel, you have to keep pushing it in different directions to get people's attention. So this is a problem of the art, but it's also a problem of the people who's interacting with the art. And we all know, like, if any of these artists are making money, if any of these artists are just anybody, they're going to have a patron with money. And so the elites they always want something that no one else can obtain, right? Like no one else has. Uh Austin Osman considered the godfather of chaos magic. He was poor, but he was a brilliant artist. And in fact, Aleister Crowley, who we're going to talk about in the second half, was very jealous of his art. Actually very jealous of him. And I don't think Austin Osman Spare was quite fond of Aleister Crowley. We'll just put it that way. We will just put it that way. I will go over your guys' comments, by the way. Yeah, Dorothy says, before marrying Dali, she was married to French poet Paul Éluard and was romantically involved with artist Mac Ernst. And I guarantee you most of these guys, not only were they into this kind of art or something, pushing the boundaries of art, they would have seen it that way. I call it an inversion of beauty because it is. A lot of it becomes grotesque and weird and bizarre, like this kind of depiction of the women. I had a friend, he was gay, and he used to make statues of just a woman, headless, legless, armless. And I would say, why did you make that statue? And I knew he didn't really like women. Like, I'm like, I'd say to him, I find it really interesting that you've made this statue. No, this isn't his statue. This is a Man Ray. I said, I find it really interesting that you've made this statue and you don't like women. You're not sexually attracted to. And this is how you decided to represent a woman. I find it kind of also a little bit creepy. But you're dealing with this kind of, there we go again. I would perceive it as a bit of a misogyny, a bit of issue with actual female and how they are. And there's the lips in the clouds. It's all very about taking apart the natural form, like I said, and putting it together in man's idea, in that artist's idea, instead of saying, wow, this amazing stuff that God has created, I am going to paint it and try to humble myself before God. I'll never be able to do God's beauty, but I'm so inspired. I want to express it. The tone changes. And by the 20s, you have what you have: Marxism, communism, all that stuff is raging across Europe. You start having this battle between fascism and Marxism. It is not just about the art, it's not just about the war, it's this crazy political upheaval and this sort of slow start of a collapse of this Christian Western Empire. And you can see it in the depravity of the art, and it doesn't stop from there, because we're going to look at some more modern art. And this isn't a show about lecturing on communism. Communism, fascism, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's all run by the same bankers. Just remember that. The bankers, the same person's running all sides. So it's never going to matter what you call it. It's depravity. So we're going to go into the modern times and what art has become today. So we started off with Man Ray. You can go through art in the 60s and 70s. You can see this sort of, there's an edginess, but I always say there's a grotesqueness to all the modern arts. Go look in the 70s at the buildings that were made post World War II, when they were rebuilding places in England. They were putting up high schools even in Canada. Some of the buildings are just blockish and ugly. You don't get the beauty of Victorian buildings. You don't even get the beauty of an Art Deco building that would have been in New York City. You just start getting ugliness as the century, advances. Ugly fonts, plain, simple orange with, just really bizarre stuff. And so we're going to look at a modern piece of art. This is Paul Joseph Watson. He's really quite funny at critiquing modern culture and wokeism and crazy people. So we're going to look at what he has to say about a modern art in England.
This is Carnarvon Castle, 1815-19, by Anthony Van Dyke Copley Fielding. A bad quality internet image doesn't do it justice, but wow, I mean, look at the light. I'd like to take a closer look at that. I'd like to soak in its full majesty. Well, you can't, because some idiots dumped a load of cardboard boxes in front of it. No, there hasn't been a delivery truck accident. The bin men haven't forgot to show up. This is supposedly a work of art. Take a look at the jaw-dropping artistry, skill and precision it took to create this masterpiece. Which basically amounted to dumping the boxes willy-nilly all over the floor out of trash bags.
Basically all the cardboard sections are die cut by a factory, and then subsequently I have to fold up all those kind of shapes together and glue them together with hot glue.
Right, so essentially he glued some factory-made cardboard boxes together. Wow, Michelangelo, eat your heart out. This isn't art, this is the desecration of art. This is vandalising beauty. Art critic Alexander Adams wrote of his horror at discovering what the Museum of Wales had done. The boxes touch the frame and the glazing of the painting. The pile of boxes is an intervention by someone designated an artist invited to interfere with a handsome painting. The activist staff of museums today will not allow you to enjoy art of the past. They will employ artivists to degrade art, to embarrass its pretensions towards profundity, sublimity and aesthetic rapture, which are undercut by interventions that prevent us from engaging with art to which we respond warmly. New art that we do not respect is used as a tool to separate us from old art we do respect. The cardboard boxes are supposed to represent a protest against the local council building houses, once again stripping art of its authentic, true purpose. Beauty for beauty's sake alone, and merely hijacking it as a vehicle for a tedious political message, while obscuring and replacing actual art. Go to Tate Modern and you'll literally find scraps of metal dropped on the floor being described as art. But at least you know that the real art is safely ensconced in its own space away from all this at Tate Britain. Not so at the Museum of Wales, where they're so obsessed with making us feel ashamed of our heritage. They'll literally heap rubbish in front of a
There you have it. this whole art exhibit where they put, they're like, "Oh, look, we had to work so hard." This student is trying to describe it. He's like, "I had to order these boxes. That's what die cut. Um, that was the la 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 la." I'm like, okay, basically he ordered some cardboard boxes. He had to fold them and glue them. He's trying to use the word die cut to confuse you. I know I was in graphic design. I had to die cut my own boxes, but I actually had to design packaging that meant something. They're like these really annoying society. I don't know who is doing this. I don't think it's just one person. There's like all these think tanks somewhere who are like, hey, you know what? Maybe we want to build a new world, this transhuman world. Maybe if we get these really pretentious art students and they'll just glue all these boxes together and make it look like that's like they'll say the process. It's always about the process. Basically, they had to glue some boxes together and then they stacked them up out of bags, and they're geniuses. There's nothing in there. There's no spirituality. There's no connection to God. There's no substance whatsoever. I don't care how long it took them to glue those boxes. When I was going to the Alberta College of Art and Design, I had to attend a class. We'll make this big here. I had to attend a class about, I think it was called Art and Design Now. And we had a guest speaker come in. And the guest speaker was showing he was a famous artist, his canvases made lots of money, and he came in and he was showing his art. And his art was literally black canvases that he had painted black. And I was sitting in that class. It was a massive lecture hall, and everybody was like oohing and awing because they have been told this is a famous artist. And they're going, oh, and I'm sitting here going, that it's your canvas is black. But wait, he says, it's about the process that I went through. Who cares about spirituality or how you feel or how the rest of society feels or how this looks like anyone could do it by rolling layers and layers of paint with maybe some stucco and some more black paint? That's not the point. The point is, it's my process. It took me 10 hours to paint this canvas, and it was just black. It was like literally all his canvases were black canvases. And I remember thinking, is this guy like laundering money? Like what's going on here? And that's when I knew that I could never be that stupid to be an artist, that he must be blowing somebody to get in big as an artist. And I went to so many modern art galleries as an art student, and I remember thinking, this all feels like they're just trying to get attention, that there's no real beauty or substance to this work at all. Like, you look at the Sistine Chapel, you're going to be like in awe of that, right? You look at this guy's black canvas and you're going to be like, okay, you want me to write on it with chalk? Like what do you want? Like, I don't get it. And then, of course, an arrogant artist will say, that's because you're ignorant and you're stupid and you don't get art. They'll project it back on you. It's like, no, it's because you're a retard that just painted the canvas black and no one's inspired. And the only way they would be inspired is if you brainwashed them to think you were an important artist, and people are paying lots of money for this junk. I wouldn't I wouldn't I wouldn't even use it as a chalkboard. The arrogance of the man. I just was like, wow, I can't believe he is being presented as this high-end artist to art students to inspire us. To what? You get people putting tampons on a pillow. It's art. I mean, I bet you guys could go and Google tons of crazy art stuff now. I had an art teacher who did performance art. And their performance art was, and this was what they're famous for, they literally shot a gun at each other. And one got hit. The other one had everybody show up for performance art at a theater, and when it was boring and dumb, he grabbed a guitar and started bashing his head with the guitar to make it exciting. That was art. That's what they were saying was art. It was just, I was like, I got to get the heck out of here. Illyria was like, when did you attend the All Art College? I believe it was in 1996. Yeah, I could go and take a class on learning how to paint better. I didn't have to go get a degree. And I felt the same way you did, Illyria, that you weren't getting anything of value. And I realized that the art thing is stocked. It's stacked, sorry. The deck is stacked against you. You've got all of these artists that they get in, they either steal other people's arts. I've had my friends see their work in a gallery because someone stole it from them. It went missing, and they had this male guy steal it from them. I've had people, they'll get hired, they'll get their stuff bought because of who they know. And Mick Jagger buys their canvas because they know somebody who knows somebody, and next thing you know, everybody's like, "Oh my god, oh my goodness!" It's just so political. It's not inspirational. It's not holy. It's not religious. It doesn't inspire anyone that, hey, we're beneath a creative source. It's like, I am the creative source. I am the artist. I create everything. I am over everything. I am God because I painted this canvas black. Or I stacked some boxes that I glued together and next to an actual piece of art. It's an inversion in, you see that. Paul Joseph Watson tells you how it's done to politically agitate people. They want to piss on the good art and separate it from you by putting their junk beside it. And it is grotesque. There's also, of course, you can't have art without having art fraud, as I mentioned before. I mentioned that quickly. This whole idea. So there's not just like serial killers doing art. It's becoming less human. It's not about the human. It's about blocks, shapes, things, stuff, political activism, riling people up, creating disturbances in society. They can't even design park benches half the time that are pro-human. They make everything sterile and gray and square. Just go look at Obama's presidential library. Go look at it. It's an abomination. It's an Obama-ation. Huh, I'm so cheesy. It's it it's it's like, where's this lead? It dehumanizes you and leads you into transhumanism is what it does. I don't know if this is planned all the way at the top of some pyramid. No, I'm not the Illuminati. I have no idea if this is planned that way, but it certainly looks like it's some strategic plan. Like there's somebody sitting there going, "What will we design and put out next?" I don't know. What's the latest modern art crap? I mean, we could keep going on and on and on at the grotesqueries. I was gonna say, well, I will put up Aleister Crowley. We'll deal with Aleister Crowley's art because he's part of the inversion in culture. He came long before World War One. He died, I believe it was 1945, and he's inverted a lot of things within culture just because of his own personality disorder and his weird Plymouth Brethren upbringing has something to do. And we will talk about him. We have a couple more videos to go through. Check the comments here. The abomination. It's an abomination. It really is. Justin says, revved up as an audience watched for a minute or so, and then they closed the door. Lyria says, sorry if I talk too much. Talk away, Lyria. The subject is close to me. I hate what they are doing. Classical music, Renaissance and before, even medieval art. A lot of people will say with medieval art, they didn't know how to do stuff. I don't think that's true. I think they could have easily done perspective and foreground, middle ground, and all that stuff. I think the medieval art was more of a style. It's like me choosing to do flat design instead of three-dimensional design. It's a style choice, and I think it was a religious representation. I think they could have easily learned how to do a more elaborate star. Justin says here, an artist once laid on the hood of a car in a crucifixion pose, had assistants nail his palms to the hood of the car while inside a garage. The garage door opened, the car was put into neutral, but revved up as the audience watched for a minute or so, and then they closed the door. You see, it's not, are you inspired by that? You're just shocked. You're just like, well, what? What's going on? You're not inspired by the true meaning of things in art anymore. It doesn't deal with the truth. Surrealism, as cool as some of the stuff is, I like Salvador Dali's art, by the way. I love some of his pieces. As cool as it is, it takes you away from reality. And it focuses your mind into like this psychosis. It's easier to put people in a psychosis. I mean, if people even go see art these days at all, if they even enjoy that. Yes, there's different styles, but it's meant to take you away from the reality. It's also, you can watch the European culture and civilization start collapsing in what is more depravity. I'm not suggesting that there was no depravity within the Catholic Church or any kind of artists, but I don't think it was as an abundance. You can see art being linked to sexual neuroticism, sexual sadism. It's there, whereas before, most of the art you're going to look at is about beauty, it's about religion, it's about connection with God, or a lot of Renaissance art will replay Greek myths and such stuff like that. It's way more inspiring. The level of skill it would take to make that art is, you can't even compare the box glowers. You know, I mean, just what's that? The giant green butt plug statue. Are you inspired by the do you walk by the giant green butt plug statue? I can't remember what city. Is that in Paris or something? And you're inspired, like, oh wow, I think I'm gonna go pray to God. It's almost comedic. It's almost a joke. Like we're like, there's nothing serious. There's nothing profane. There's nothing to obtain. It takes away people's meaning in life, and it makes them feel like they're meaningless. They're just body parts. They're just things to be used by this technocratic system. And that's the the sadness of kind of inverting Christianity. Is it's like you're only useful as long as you're doing stuff and you're serving the system, and after that you're just pieces. You're just things for us to manipulate and decode and switch around and stab vaccinations in. That's all you are.
Oh, this is Canard.
So let's Canaving Castle. There's no awe. If you think, there's not a God that creates everything, the whole nature is just there for you to use, then there's no awe in anything. So now we're going to go to the biggest part. We're going to look at Hunter Biden, because did you know that Hunter Biden was an artist? Yeah. And people think that I'm going to give him this before we play this. He's not a bad artist. He's not a great artist, but he's not a bad artist. And so a lot of people think they wouldn't pay this much for his art, and he's commanding big dollars. And there was a lot of criticism of him. And this gets into this art as rich people using it basically to embezzle money or traffic money or make deals. Or someone would buy Hunter Biden's art so that they could curry favor with his father. That piece might be worth $5,000 or $10,000, but we'll give you $500,000 if you just let us have a meeting with your dad. That kind of thing. So let's watch this clip.
To spare for a painting to go over your mantelpiece, you could have got this Degas or this Renoir or this Picasso. You can now buy a genuine, wait for it, a genuine Hunter Biden.
Well, you heard it right, up to $500,000 for a single piece of artwork by the president's son in his first solo art exhibition opening this fall. But ethics watchdogs say the sale could pose some serious problems. Richard Painter, chief ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush, joins us live. So, Richard, what are some of those serious ethics problems that we're talking about?
Yeah, poor Hunter, though. Stuff must have happened for him to become this weird. Well, his mother died when he was young, and his father, his father was Joe Biden. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, first of all, I don't know why he needs to sell the art right now. I thought he made enough money on that Ukrainian gas company that he could perhaps...
I just have to interrupt. Is this guy for real? Is that how he talks? It's just so bizarre. It's bizarre.
art and then sell it after his father leaves office. Second, the prices are extraordinarily high for someone who does not have an established reputation as an artist. And I know there's all sorts of crazy stuff that's being sold as modern art these days at very high prices, but these prices are quite outrageous. And third is the agreement that was reached with the art dealer, who, by the way, also apparently sells art for Sylvester Stallone and others. This deal the White House reached with the art dealer where they were going to keep the buyers secret, and we're not going to know who the buyers are.
I'm just pausing it here because I don't think Hunter's a bad artist. But if his father wasn't Joe Biden, he wouldn't be commanding this much. I can tell you that right now. But it occurs to me that modern art is really just like it is about composition. So there is a talent there that you have to have the right color composition and the right layout. Like he's put work into it. But it's also like it's still not inspiring. I don't look at that picture and be like, wow, I just feel so much more connected to everything. I look at the picture and like, well, that's interesting. Art's become more intellectual in this like really cold way, as opposed to I feel so inspired by this art that I want to go take a walk in nature, or I feel like this portrait of Mary, Mother Mary, connects me to God and I can pray to her. It doesn't inspire. It's just about what do you see in the Rorschach, painting kind of thing. There's something very empty about it. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way about that. Maybe you don't. There is some modern art I like, but most of it is just in your face, political activism. And in this case, I don't think he's a bad artist, but I don't think any artist should be commanding this amount of money. And there's only one reason they would.
And this doesn't work because people are going to imagine and
come up with a plan where no one, not even Hunter Biden, will know who is buying his artwork. And they say that will alleviate any ethics issues. But the concern is that people will find out who is buying his paintings, and then they could sort of use that to curry some sort of favors or influence among the Biden administration. How likely do you think that could happen?
Well, somebody's going to be paying this kind of money for artwork. They're very likely to hang it on the wall in the living room. They're not going to put it in the closet. And then people have parties and invite other people over. And as I say, it could be purchased by some foreign dignitary and be on their walls. And then they invite over the American ambassador. Oh, you've got original Hunter Biden. Oh, this is really great. And I can't imagine.
Yeah, we'll just leave Hunter Biden over that way. And now you guys can go out there and find many different works of modern art, some that you're going to like, some that you're not. There's a lot of political activism in modern art. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these activists were funded by somebody, I don't know, a banker or two, or somebody at the top. I also want to point out the effect that this type of art has on education. Someone had mentioned the education stuff, I think on one of the posts I did on YouTube, the dumbing down of education. And when we dumb down art, now people are just pressing buttons and AI is making the art for us. When we dumb down things into these shapes, instead of actually learning how to mold the human form, I think it does something to the brain. And it's the same with the education system. And we think this dumbing down just started modern times, but it started probably post World War II, honestly. And so that will tie into the music industry, because music's art. The musical sounds are dumbed down. It's getting like 20 people write a simple song. Like nobody can really write real music anymore. And you're noticing there's like a central song production. It's all manufactured like a machine. There's no human connection. There's no, people want it all digital. That stuff is happening. But the education system, I'm going to show you this. And I know some of you might be attached to some of these books or some of these education shows, but if you go back to someone who fought in the Civil War, that person in the Civil War had a much vaster vocabulary than you and I have. And if you read their letters, they will use words and they will speak in ways and with respect that we don't talk with, we don't use. Um, People always like to portray people in the past as stupid and dumb, but a lot of people were either taught in small classrooms with many different ages in the classroom. And so they learned from each other. They read the Bible. They read long form texts that had a mass of words. They might have even read Shakespeare, or they were learning at home. People would teach them through the Bible. Maybe they were illiterate, but people were still literate because you can go and read Civil War soldiers' letters, and it's a game changer. Post World War II, what you start seeing is things like Dick and Jane books. Public education for the masses, which means you have to dumb it down. It has to be digestible for a large amount of people, and it's meant to make people come out and basically be factory workers. So take a look. Look, Jane, look. See Dick. See? Oh, see. Like, this is the level that they were teaching people at. And go look at that, and I guarantee you children before this, if they were learning in classroom, probably learned more in-depth books than this that is easily digestible. It's easily digestible, and you can see with that, as well as shows like Sesame Street. Look, I watched Sesame Street when I was little, but those shows, although they're there to make children educated, there's also this sense of dumbing down children because we're all learning this really base level of education. That's why they want it. You know, when Trump first came in and they said that we had been funding Sesame Street in Iran or Iraq or something like that, they want those shows over there because they want children watching these dumbed down sort of central global kind of education and not reading harder texts, maybe their Bible, maybe learning from their family members, maybe doing hands-on. They want them standing there staring at the TV going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Like, they want them doing simple education techniques, and it's just escalated from then. It's gone from Dick and Jane to I don't know what. So that pushes us into the music industry. I'm going to end the artist part and say, obviously, I think it's soulless. Obviously, I think that art has lost its soul, that it's used to rile people up, create disturbances in society, create less, give a humanlessness. I'm going to dry throat right now. Hold on just a second. I'm going to take a drink. I'm not persuaded by the kind of art that it's been created for any positive effect on society. And especially when you see art galleries allowing artists to spew their stuff next to actual real pieces of art, it sort of becomes obvious that they're trying to rile society up and they're trying to demoralize the historical art pieces. Teletubby and Cocomelon, like all that stuff, it keeps your children infantilized for longer. And you're wondering, why don't kids move out? Why aren't kids doing this? It's because they're learning this in school and they have this generic education stuff that keeps them infantilized, like Little Baby and even some of the children's show presenters talk baby talk. And it's bizarre. And so these shows, although I enjoyed them as a kid, I don't think they did us any good. And I think it's gotten worse and worse and worse, the way that the presentation on them. This gets us into Aleister Crowley, the stuff that he's doing. We'll get into that second half. But before we go into this, I'm going to leave you with this video before the 5-minute break. And it's talking about Kabbalah in the music industry. And I know the music industry is dumbing us down as well. Music is a form of art. You go listen to Mozart and you go listen to rap music. And it doesn't matter what they're saying. You can hear the difference in just the instruments that's being used, the vibration, the words, how it's presented, the melody, the bass. It is even if you compared folk music to modern music, there's no comparison. That everything's getting dumber. And I used to laugh at people who would come in when I worked in a gym and they'd say, I just hate this modern music. I'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever. But now I get what they're saying. We have Disney for adults now. It's crazy stuff. Anyways, we're going to look at this video. I'm going to leave you with this. Then we're going to go to the break. Then we're going to come back and talk about Crowley and how he's shaping the New World Order. We've seen how art has gone and depraved, and we'll see how some kind of occult attitudes are part of that. And I will admit, technology is driving this and has always been driving it. Even way back in 1920, in 1870, or whenever photography was created. It's always driving this stuff forward so that we become less human. It's an irony of society. Gangster rap was CIA psyop. It totally was. It totally was. And there's something about the way that the notes are done that is hypnotic and very occult. But let's go check out this guy. So this guy runs his own channel. He was in with Eminem, I think, and he shares his experiences on how they use occult rituals and Kabbalah to actually make hit records and how they make deals. It's a creepy video. I'm gonna let this guy speak for himself because I don't think I could add it justice. Because the minute I saw it, I'm like, I'm gonna have to introduce this because it has a Kabbalah thing, and Crowley ties in with Kabbalah. It's a little different than the Jewish mysticism, but yet there's so many similarities. So we're gonna take a look at this and look at the Kabbalah in the music industry. There's a little modern art for you. This is good. It's a few minutes long.
Ted Raimi, a famous horror movie director today.
He's talking about Ted Raimi. He actually means Sam Raimi. It gets crazy. He's talking about movie, films. He's talking about Eminem, all these people, and how they do rituals for their stuff. And remember, if you know who Sam Raimi is, he's talking about Sam Raimi's father. Sam Raimi had gotten him into stuff. And if you know who Sam Raimi is the director of Evil Dead movie, the original one. He's directed many other films. And he's going to say something really interesting about them and the music industry. And in this whole interview, he talks about Eminem and all this stuff, and the 13th floor being hidden in buildings where they do rituals, where they do Kabbalah on the records. It gets really crazy, but this is just a quick clip.
Hollywood director, but many of his films, if not most, are horror. And his name is Ted Raimi. My name is Theodore. My father's name was.
It's actually Sam Raimi, the director. His brother is Ted Raimi. His brother is an actor. So he got that wrong.
And my grandfather's name was Theodore. So my grandfather and Mr. Raimi were very tight, I believe, tight enough for Mr. Raimi to name one of his sons after my grandfather. So Mr. Raimi shared this secret with my grandfather. And this is something that happens also in the music business. Sometimes the artist, who may be from the inner city or the ghetto, forms a relationship or a bond with somebody in management who may be from the quote unquote Jewish community. And oftentimes they will share with them Kabbalistic understanding that they have, or knowledge that they have been, knowledge that someone has shared with them as to how to get ahead in the devil's world. And so he shared knowledge with my grandfather about the Lesser Key of Solomon. And I found these books when I was 14 years old. And they used the Lesser Key of Solomon. And when I say they, I mean my grandfather pulled my father, who was 14 at the time. My grandfather pulled my father into this because it was a two-man working. Some rituals require a particular amount of people or particular colors to be worn or particular precious metals to be had on. And so this particular working required either a father and a son or two people. And so he brought my dad in on it. And my father told me about this story several times. One time very somberly, and he shared with me how disappointed he was at how Granddaddy ran when the lesser demon appeared inside of the sacred circle on the floor, which was what was supposed to happen. And they had practiced and rehearsed this.
Sorry, guys, my mic was muted. It cuts off just before he talks about Eminem and the rituals that they do. They use Kabbalistic and Kiasalm. They'll take their demo tape. They'll have these meetings. You know how you see like the building and it's got like all these floors, but it won't have the 13th floor. It'll say that the 13th floor, they don't have it because it's mysterious, but they actually do have a floor there. And there's places where they'll meet in this 13th floor and they will do some kind of rituals, and a lot of times on demo tapes they will do these rituals that they say will ensure that it's like 85% increased chance of being popular or doing well. And so these artists whether they know it or not, they kind of make contracts and deals with these people in the music industry that are practicing a lot of these weird rituals and Kabbalah and things of some kind of god who knows what they're manifesting. We'll get into Aleister Crowley and some of the stuff that he manifested and believed, and so that it kind of gives them it's like Faustus. It's like a modern Faustus, so they can have the riches and the fame and the success and everything they want. But of course, whenever you do that, when you strike the deal, you lose your humanity. You lose your soul, because that's the deal. That's how the devil does the deals in that kind of Faustus, kind of mythology, the opera. And opera too is things like that could have been seen as very taboo in their day, but you see this progression. And like I said, the art, the music, everything is in this progression of something really empty and devoid. And we're going to, when we come back in about 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to have to take some of these videos out. I have to let my dogs out. I'm going to have to switch up some videos. We're going to talk about Aleister Crowley, Kabbalah, and why he has influenced modern technology, and maybe how Kabbalah influences code, influences how a whole our world behaves, and the two different kinds of Kabbalah. We'll get into it in a minute. Illyria says their magic is how to use natural things like frequencies, colors, etc. for evil, for control over others. Yeah, they don't like the natural order of anything. But I will be back in just about 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. We'll see when I can get these videos on. And in the meantime, you guys enjoy the little soundtrack I'm going to put up for you. Give it a thumbs up and stay tuned. I won't be long. I need a voice break and I need to get new video footage in the system. All right, everybody, I am back. Hope you enjoyed the music. Little Mozart there for you guys. As we're going to be doing something a little less inspiring than Mozart. Actually, Aleister Crowley, I don't totally villainize him, of course, but obviously I find huge issues with Aleister Crowley. You can go check on my show about him. I think I'm pretty fair with Aleister. I think I'm pretty fair. And I also had somebody on who was a Thelemite to talk about Aleister Crowley, so I've given it the fair cover, and I do hear people say things about Aleister that's not true. And I will start out saying this about Mr. Crowley is he definitely did not mind being portrayed as the wickedest man in the world or the most evil man. It was like that's the whole point of the egregore. And we've talked about the egregore in this show before. It's like this sort of spiritual kind of entity manifestation created by a group of people. And we're creating them all the time. And I believe that's what, Aleister understood this as a magician, as a practitioner of things that were very not accepted in Christian society. He would have understood this creation of an egregore. And for him, through his perspective, people writing about him and doing this kind of promotional stuff helped him create this force of control, this persona, something that would precede him and help his will and help his way along the way. So before we get in, I'll go through some comments. Let's see. Let's see. Here we go. We have, yes, you are right that the Kabbalah that Crowley was into, which is the Western ceremonial magic, is not quite the same. It's not quite the same, but there's some similarities. And I think they kind of get confused. There's some differences, but I think both of them are inspiring, have inspired or controlled what has happened now. There's a Christian magic version spelled Kabbalah. I don't think Orthodox people would be so crazy about that. Western Kabbalah, Illyria says, is still Abrahamic. It's derived from the Jewish one as the same religion it is. There's so much similarities. I mean, Crowley was like, hey, I'll just put a Q on it, and call it mine. Narcissists do that sometimes. Yeah. Yeah, they believed in the Merkaba and other ideas associated with mysticism. Illyria says, I don't know about Crowley, but I met some Thelema folks and didn't like their arrogance. Reminded me of the Freemasons. Those are insufferable. My friend who was Thelema, I think what's really trying about it for me is they tend to scoff at it. Like if I present conspiracy theories to a lot of people, they're like, that's just crazy. Here's the newspaper article of the logical reason that they did this. Like they tend to see themselves in the magic as a power grab and above the creation of the world, when the rightful order is you should be underneath all of creativity. You can call it the God. In Christianity, it's God or Jesus. And through Jesus, Catholics you could talk to Mary to get to Jesus. That's the chain of discussion. But they believe that, and I think they're right. And when you don't have that humbling concept that you are beneath all of creation and that creation is just here to use and pull apart and bend to your will because you are more important than anything and everything else, you are godlike, I think that becomes a serious problem. And I think you're going to see that in Aleister Crowley and other people at the time. Bankers, they're pretty, no offense, they're pretty detached from a god that's below them. They've had so much time to develop technology that they almost become inhuman. They almost become detached from a soul. It's like something's interfering. Either they're psychopaths, they're born psychopaths, or they somehow been manipulated and detached from a soul. Incognito said, I actually was enjoying the music. I'm glad. We had a little Mozart today. And Mozart himself was, an ingenue. He was a kind of the rock and roll star of his time. But as you can see, rap music and Mozart are two different things, which is why I decided to play some Mozart for you guys while I was gone and uploading those things. That's the problem with magic, is it can get detached from reality and get into hysteria. And you get people like Aleister Crowley commanding people to his will. I mean, he was known to be arrogant. There was some deep issues with Crowley. I wouldn't call him the most evil man in the world. There are men more evil, who have done far worse things than Crowley. But he definitely had an impact, an influence, and I think he predicted correctly the future of the world. I mean, he might have kind of joked and called it Crowleyanity, but he predicted this future of the world where people are doing whatever they want. There's no cohesiveness, and they're the gods. They're not under God. Yes, you can say we're a part of the whole system that is God, but I don't think that's what people are doing today. I think people are like, I am the God. And you get religion is always been manipulated, because underneath God is humans, and you get humans infiltrated everywhere in all sorts of things that do bad things. But the whole concept is that we're not above the planet. It's like you've got these tech bros who want to create an AI god, and they want to attach us all to this AI god, and they want us all to be in this system where we worship their AI god under Noahide laws. I talked about this last time, as if there's no god, like the planet doesn't have a living source. But everything they do is derived from taking energy from the planet and from the human beings that are like apples on the tree, but we're people on the planet. Everything they do derives from the source of life that would be God, that he created everything. He, she, I'm not going to say she, God, whatever, if it even has a gender. They are underneath it no matter what. It's like a speck of dirt trying to compete with the whole universe and be like, look what I can do. I can dig some tunnels underground, and I can make the internet. And I mean, they've done amazing things. But to what end? Is it to help human beings? No, it's to imprison people and control everything and start wars and make money. And a lot of this stuff is linked to Kabbalah. A lot of these systems. Let's see. I might have to reset up my screens again, because when I uploaded, I had to. Let's add a new media scene. There we go. We're going to do a quick intro into Aleister Crowley. We just have a couple of quick videos. We'll do a quick little intro into Aleister Crowley, and we'll get into Kabbalah and how Kabbalah might have influenced a lot of technology, and how Aleister Crowley had a good influence on people. He's influenced NASA. He influenced Jack Parsons. He's influenced a lot of people who are worshiping different gods and manifesting gods. And I think they may be getting a lot of their information from these type of gods that they're bringing forth. Let's check this one out here.
1909, Crowley began releasing a biannual periodical, The Equinox, which he used as the official organ of the AA. He continued publications of the Equinox while touring Algeria, where he performed an evocation to the demon Choronzon involving a blood sacrifice. Upon his return to London from the desert, Crowley discovered he was being sued by Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers for publishing secrets of the Golden Dawn and the Equinox. Not only did Crowley win the case, its widely reported coverage by the press also grew his fame, sensationalizing him as a Satanist and advocate of human sacrifice. Crowley enjoyed and even played into this stereotype, despite being...
Yeah. Well, today a lot of people are considering him a Satanist. Of course, I'm not exactly going to promote Crowley as some good Christian. And one of the things we have to talk about, and we'll talk about this right now, actually, we'll go to bigger screen, is how Crowley grew up. And I think the key to Crowley's personality disorder and his impulsiveness, he's impulsive. He disregards other people's safety. He, is sexually impulsive. He is really difficult to get along with. He tries to take over everything and anything. You can go and look to his raising by his father, who was strict into Plymouth Brethren. And if you look at these Plymouth Brethrens and these Quakers, they're very strict, but you noticed a lot of people may not know this. A lot of these really strict religions were dealing, including Jewish religions and Quakers, a lot of the Protestants, they were doing human trafficking, slave trading, prostitution. They were using human beings. They would also get into brewery, which is what Crowley's father was into. And if you know anything about the witchcraft sprees, one of the group of women that were accused of witchcraft and taken out were women who were brewmeisters. They would brew beer or wine and they were making a profit. They did it on the side. Maybe they were mothers, but they were Christian. They weren't witches, they weren't crazy, but they were brewing, and to get rid of them and out of the way so they could take over the brewing industry, a lot of these type of religions, I think my dogs are chasing each other outside. A lot of these different types of religions and different people would accuse them of witchcraft. So that's where it came, like, oh, they've got a cauldron and a pot and this. A lot of these women who were making brews were taken out and accused of witchcraft. And Crowley's father, interestingly enough, ran Crowley's Ale. I think he had other business partners, but he ran Crowley's Ale, and they were deep Plymouth Brethren. That makes me suspicious right away that they were dealing in something probably more than just even ale, that there might have been sketchy business going on underneath there because his father was quite wealthy off of this. It's key to Aleister Crowley's personality. Not that he's a Satanist, but he does. A lot of people will say, "Well, do what thou will is the whole of the law. Love under law. Love is the law. Love under will, or whatever it is." And they'll say that just means you do what you're here to do. But for a lot of people, that that doesn't translate well. That translates to a form of narcissism where you're just here for yourself, that there's nothing higher, it's just you and your magic. There's not, it's you bending and shaping things to your will. And Crowley was very good at that. There was a point, and I don't have the clip here, I believe I showed it in one of my other shows, where Crowley actually understood how to manipulate someone's actual body movements. And what he would do, which is so parasitical, is he would sort of mimic their movements. For a time, he would mimic what they were doing and merge his energy with theirs and like pretend to trip and cause them to trip. So he had this ability, according to him and other people around him, to influence people's actual movements and body movements and kind of take over them a little bit, which is really not a positive, way of doing. They're not praying for a bountifulness from the provider of the universe, the creator of the planet, and trying to stay at harmony with things. They're trying to bend things to their will. And this is the whole thing about modernism that we get in all these art forms and artworks, is bending the natural world to your will and expressing yourself, because your emotions are so important. And the other thing about a lot of these modern art, it's very dark and negative. No one's saying, I want to be awe-inspiring, I want to paint what I feel is God inspired. They're like, oh, my dark depression and the horrors of war. And I get how that has to come out somewhere, but it has an effect on society. And I think obviously technology and all of these crazy wars that's the result. It's like a trauma, PTSD, I'm going to worship the devil because life sucks kind of thing. When if you realized all these wars are manipulated by these dark Satanists anyways, then you'd understand, oh, I get it. This is the time not to let go of the divine creator and the positivity in the universe and God. This is the time to actually pray a little bit more and talk a little bit more and not let go and not get into darker areas. This is actually the perfect time for it. So we're going to watch the second half
1909, Crowley began.
where it talks about Crowley. We'll get into him a little bit more. But the Plymouth Brethren stuff is really important to Crowley's personality because when his father died, of course, he did an inversion of what he saw as a holy man. He inverts it and becomes this wicked holy man, this wicked magician. And I think that's important to know about Crowley's base personality.
Crowley believed that the 20th century marked humanity's entry to the Aeon of Horus, a new epoch in which humans would take control of their destiny. He was convinced that Thelema was the proper religion for this time. Thelema revolves around the idea that each individual has their own true will that they should discover and pursue, and that this exists in harmony with the cosmic will that pervades the universe. Crowley referred to this process of searching and discovering one's true will as the great work. Crowley incorporated magic and mysticism into his theology, viewing magic as a bridge between religion and science. He's been quoted as saying that, quote, magic is getting into communication with individuals who exist on a higher plane than ours. Mysticism is the raising of oneself to their level. Today, Aleister Crowley remains an influential figure among occultists as well as in popular culture. He appears as one of the figures on the cover art of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and his motto, "Do What Thou Wilt," was inscribed on the vinyl of Led Zeppelin's third album. Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page lived in one of Crowley's homes on Loch Ness, Scotland, reporting several strange occurrences at the mansion. Even L. Ron Hubbard, the founder of Scientology, was notably involved in Thelema in the early 1940s, and it's been argued that Crowley's influence can be found in Hubbard's own work and belief system. Although the 2008 B-movie Chemical Wedding, written by Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden, featured Crowley as the main antagonist, it was not received well by either mainstream or cult audiences, and a major film adaptation of Crowley's life has yet to appear on the big screen. However, with such a unique life story, it's only a matter of time before the wickedest man in the world graces the...
Okay. So you see that Crowley is doing this about, he believes the aeon of man is coming. Man is taking control of everything. We're literally like this little speck of dust in the universe, by the way. Just remember that when we keep talking about this. And, this idea that you can talk to these higher beings. Like, the Catholic Church is going to say, oh, that's like a kind of, you could be talking to demons, and they're right. You could be talking to anything. You don't know, but it's about this idea of manifesting higher beings for information. And I think with Crowley, because he influenced so many things, including Jack Parsons with NASA, and his writings went on to, with drug use as a form of spirituality and experimenting go anywhere. Some of the things that Crowley did, we cannot forget, were grotesque and depraved. It wasn't just about do what you want. And it was a nice, walk in the garden. It wasn't about being at peace with nature. It was about going through the worst shit to obtain enlightenment. And the irony of everything with Crowley is when you put your body and yourself through the worst stuff, you come out damaged. You don't come out enlightened. You don't necessarily come out enlightened unless you can somehow move beyond the trauma, right? Most people don't enjoy, weird sex stuff and abuse and being tied up or eating dog shit or having sex with animals. Like, that's grotesquerie. And Aleister didn't have boundaries because he has a personality disorder, and he is reckless. He's impulsive and reckless. And so this idea that he's contacting beings, who's he contacting? What are they telling him? Do these beings give them this information? Are they storing this stuff from Kabbalah? Let's look at some stuff I have written about Kabbalah here. I want to get this correct. That's not the one. So here we go. Aleister Crowley's Kabbalah with a Q. This is what he used. That tree of life thing right up there. It was an hermetic adaptation of the Jewish Kabbalah with a K, shifting focus from traditional mystic Judaism towards practical ceremonial magic and individual empowerment within the Thelemic framework. It prioritizes self-initiation, syncretic correspondences, combining Greek and the true will, rather than a strict adherence to Torah-based studies and observance. So he does it more on an individual basis. He's like chaos magic for Kabbalah. Kabbalah does use chaos magic, by the way. The key connections. Oh, that's the wrong one, because we will talk about Kabbalah and Noahide. So traditional Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism discipline focused on understanding of God, interpreting the Torah. And I'm not all for that. By the way, the Torah says and the Talmud says some pretty crazy stuff. And a lot of Jews don't like the Jewish mysticism stuff either. Crowley's Kabbalah is part of Hermetic. The purpose central tenet is do what thou wilt. Correspondence books are 777 and other Kabbalistic writings. Expands the tree of life to include the tarot, astrology, and diverse mythological systems. So it has an expansion on the tree of life. But its base is the same tree of life that is used in the Jewish Kabbalah mysticism. And we're going to go into how that tree of life is influencing tech and code and all that other stuff, and possibly an AI god. And so if you think it was kind of creepy that Crowley kind of summoned beings like lamb, I think they're taking the same Kabbalah stuff and they're summoning something else, or they're creating a god. Methodology. Crowley emphasizes gematria, which the Jewish Kabbalah uses as well. We talked about gematria actually on our show, one of our older shows. It uses Notre Creon acronyms and Tamura letter substitution to unlock magical meanings. Do you guys read that? Do you know how much corporations and governments, do you know how much acronyms we use? I bet you if you look at MEGA, that's they probably did some kind of Kabbalistic mystic creation under MEGA. Companies and corporations use acronyms like crazy. Go look it up. That is Torah. That we are living in a Torah world. Nothing is spelt out long form anymore and talked about, discussed, and around the table. It's acronym or key words like shooting out. Those things are magic. Acronyms are magic. This says it's spelt out right that way. So we have that. Now, I'm going to pull up an article in a bit, but we're going to talk about the Kabbalah and Noahide law. Okay? Because there's similarity. The Kabbalah with a Q, the Kabbalah with a K, they're all coming from this tree of life. Gematria, all those things link to spells with acronyms. It's why I tell you guys not to wear people's logos, not to go to their events, not to give them money, and not to feed the egregore and their logos and their sigils, and not to give the energy to especially political parties, banks, corporations, celebrities, Aleister Crowley even. It's dangerous. It's dangerous stuff, I'm telling you. Here we go. So Kabbalah's links to Noahide laws. Noahides are us. We're like non-Jews that are forced to go by their laws. And the Noahide laws is what's going to come into the new system. It's by providing the mystical spiritual rationale behind the 7 universal commandments for non-Jews. So this is Jews saying, here's your commandments when you're our slaves. Kabbalistic teachers explain that these laws are essential to elevating the material world and connecting it to divine light. You hear what they just said there? They want to elevate the material world, make it perfect, and connect it to divine light. It highlights the 7 laws as corresponding to the 7 emotional sephirots and the 70 ancestral roots nation. Wow. So you got the crown of 620 laws. Kabbalah teaches that the 613 Jewish commandments plus the 7 Noahide laws correspond to the numerical value gematria. So this gets more deep into what they believe. The Noahide laws are viewed as a fundamental structure that sustains the world. So they want us to follow it as us. And beneath Jewish people will just be these kind of Noahides. So this is the difference between the kind of Noahide Kabbalah and the Kabbalah of Aleister Crowley. They actually prohibit occultism. Kabbalah texts provide the strict definition for the prohibition of idolatry, witchcraft, and fortune telling, which is where Crowley goes a little bit astray because he incorporates that into the Kabbalah. So very interesting stuff. But all those things are influenced. We're coming under this law. This is where technology is going. So we're going to take a look in a second. Let's see if we have some interesting comments there. We're going to take a look, I think. Let's go back here. We'll take.
Crowley believed.
And I have an article here that discusses distinctly the idea that Kabbalah, here we go. Let's have a look at that one. I just now got to find it on my browser. Okay, it says, from ancient Jewish texts to androids to AI, a just right sequence of numbers or letters turns matter into meaning. So what was thought of as this silly, crazy, mystical Jewish stuff, or Aleister Crowley's Kabbalah, is actually, they're saying, could be the influence behind a lot of the stuff, the coding, the concepts behind what they've done with mobility, internet, turning matter into meaning. The problem with it is it takes matter as the prime source and not spirit, and it wants to merge it with some kind of light. You can kind of see this kind of transhumanist thing happening right before your eyes. It's a very different from Christianity in that way. Okay, so here we go. Isaac Asimov's iconic science fiction collection, I, Robot, tells the story of androids created at U.S. Robots and Mechanical Men. The androids range from Robbie. Yeah, each model is made of the same elementary components, the binary codes of ones and zeros. Remember that. All of this code stuff and computer stuff gets down to ones and zeros, left and right kind of thing. The building blocks of creation. Integral to Kabbalah is the notion that the Hebrew letters are the building blocks of the cosmos. According to mystical interpretation, the creation story. In the book of Genesis, God brought the world into being by creating the alphabet, then assembled the earth and sky by recombing the letters. God is portrayed as an architect, and the Torah a blueprint in creation to the world. The way the letters of the alphabet emerge and combine has an uncanny resemblance to combining and combing and recombing of the strings of DNA. The Sefer Yetzirah, or Book of Creation, describes the Hebrew letters as having great power. From mud to man, see, this is their golem story. This is an earlier form. They're basing all this stuff in transhumanism, bringing people live on the golem. Then you have like Frankenstein. It's from clay and making the clay come alive. They don't recognize spirit. They're not like, they don't think that it's not organic. It's them taking material, thinking they can just put the light in it and have a soul. And in Christianity, it's quite different. Your soul comes from a place beyond, and only God has access to that. I mean, it gets a lot more difficult. But this is like Frankenstein stuff that we're still dealing with here. This is like AI's Frankenstein, the golem, right there. While there are numerous versions of this Jewish legend, the golem, the notion that the letters animate the golem is common to them all. The mass of molded earth becomes lifelike when its maker intones secret combinations of letters. Engraved on the golem's forehead is the word for truth, which Jewish tradition interprets to mean that truth is all-encompassing. The golem sometimes helps the Jewish community or wreaks havoc, depending on the story, but the golem also represents something bigger. Man imitates God's act of creation. That is what we have here. We have a system that wants to harness the power of creation and put spirit into the material world and do it that way. And I think that is an inversion of how it's done. And it's man trying to control everything. You see people like Aleister Crowley doing this in their magic. They're trying to control things. They're trying to harness the power to control other people. I don't know that Crowley actually believed that he was going to, create life. When they were doing the rituals to create the moon child, the NASA stuff, the Jack Parsons were trying to create the moon child, he actually thought they were nuts. But they're going somewhere with this. They're combining Crowley and Kabbalah, and they want to create their moon child, their AI god. It's so bizarre how it's all combined, and it's actually the inversion of how you create life. How do you create life? Man and woman come together and create a baby, and the womb is sacred. This whole process wipes that out and says, no, we can put the light into material. We can do it Frankenstein style. 100%. To heck with women, to heck with Mother Mary. It's so insane. And to do that, that's how you convince women that having babies is bad. Well, having babies can be dangerous, but it's certainly not bad if you have a baby. So coding everywhere you look. Like the golem, robots, androids, and even AI are powered with recombinations of elemental units. Instead of Hebrew letters, the units are ones and zeros. In both instances, the specific permutation makes all the difference, and all these creations have inspired speculative stories about what happens when familiar building blocks are rearranged. The creature in Mary Shelley's Frankensteins arises as assortment of body parts. Novelist Margaret Atwood's Crakers are humans 2.0, bioengineered from reshuffled genes. Such patterns are not just stuff of fiction, nor are they limited to computer science. Permutive coding is all around. Music notes are arranged to form a melody. Gene sequences are combined to form an organism. Owls, geckos, peoples, roses. The instructions encased in DNA comprise recombinations. What were they trying to do with the clot shot? They're trying to reshuffle the DNA to make you a more perfect human, which is anti-God, anti-creation. They're saying God isn't doing a good job. We know how. We're going to control this, and we're going to set you in a system that's our own system that mimics the real world, but it's not reality. This is the level of what we're dealing with here. The biological difference between complex human and simple bacterium is the order in which the pairs are arranged. How about that? Yeah, they say not all combination works. That's right. Not all. Some of those combinations kill you. So here we have it. The whole entire concept behind the tree of life, the letterings, the sequence in which letters are made, that concept is what is rooted behind DNA technology, behind coding, behind the internet, behind this fake world that they're trying to create so they can make man better. They can mold and shape the material instead of being inspired and awed by the real creative source. You're like, what? It's okay. I've got a couple more videos in a second here. It's so bizarre that golem. When I was researching this, I was thinking about that golem character. So when they bring it up in that article, I was like, I have to use this because AI is golem. AI is Frankenstein, but it's done in a more digital manner They have just progressed it from stitching body parts to we can make our own. We can change the actual. Now that we've had technology advances, we can actually go in after their DNA. We can keep furthering this concept that we've had in our religion or in our mystic whatever. Crowley has heavily influenced modern science, especially NASA, space travel, Rocket Boy with Jack Parsons. And a lot of these people, even on military bases, do strange rituals. That's why they do them on military bases, so no one has access to it. There's Satanists, all sorts of crazy ideas floating around. But the idea is always to advance this technology so that they can control global control over the body, merge the flesh, alter the physical, and merge it with their own light, their own system, their own God, their own little AI future creepy God. And with that, I need a break. I'm talking way too much. We need to get to another video. I think I got a Dr. Deep State video to share with you guys. Let's check it.
The perversion of the sacred. It's like, okay, we're supposed to live in this secular scientific society where we've overcome, medieval concepts of metaphysical realities, and so now we're in this sort of secular age. Yet we can't shed the sacred. We still have to inject this kind of sacred power, but through inversion and through desecration of the sacred image. With the artist you're in. Robert Mapplethorpe was a very outwardly homosexual photographer who staged like classical paintings of, scenes of like, Thomas putting his hand in the side of Christ, and images from the life of Christ, and he would stage these as like homosexual bondage scenes and stuff like that. And then this was getting public funding during the time of the Reagan administration, while you have I forget what was the White House callboy scandal and stuff. I think those things happened at almost exactly the same time. So there's this play of externalization that you have. Yeah. Oh, this is what is publicly valuable and sacred, and this is what your tax dollars are going to, and this is the official art of the society, and then deal with it. Swallow it. This is your culture.
Yeah. So he's talking about there was a boy scandal in the White House that got covered up during Reagan's era. And even in Reagan's era, as a Republican, they were pushing this kind of weird art. Like they were taking the real spirituality and they were putting it as bondage. And there's a lot of weird sexuality and sex obsession, sex addiction to Crowley, to a lot of these people who do Kabbalah. And one thing you have to know, if you're saying you study Kabbalah out there, know this. The rich people study a different Kabbalah. The Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, Freemasons, you're going to your local Freemason, doing business connection. You're not doing 33rd degree stuff. They rate up to about 35. I think most Jewish men wouldn't even know a lot of this. Most Jewish people don't even understand a lot of this is happening. When they're about 35, if they're invested in these upper groups, then they show them some creepy stuff. So the mainstream stuff, if you're reading a book, you don't know the secret society initiatory stuff at all. And they'll put it out there. They'll put hints out in art and trying to creep you out with gene therapy. But we are literally dealing with today not only the code that was inspired by that tree of life stuff and all the acronyms and the alphabet. We're dealing not only with that, we're dealing with this gene therapy, Frankenstein, golem kind of outlook that comes from Jewish mysticism. And Crowley was heavily influenced by that. Crowley believed, he knew you could create an egregore. That's why he didn't mind a lot of the press releases on him that created him as the wickedest man, that actually fed his power. But like everything, all of these characters always collapse. So you know what happens in the story. The golem goes mad. Frankenstein attacks his owner. The egregore finally falls apart. Aleister Crowley, what happens when you're using drugs for rituals and trying to manipulate stuff? The body eventually fails. So the irony of all of this stuff that we're looking at, whether it's with art, is that, eventually, all of these tech bros, all these people in charge, all these magicians suffer the fate of their consequences. They see the body as imperfect, and it is. But I think Catholicism has always accepted that we're not perfect. The idea isn't to be perfect. Yeah, you're going to repent if you're a bad person and talk about your sins, but the idea is not to be perfect. It's to repent your sins and try to be good to each other, but it's not this idea of we can make you a super person. We can be above God. We can take a harness and we can take a hold of creation. It's that we're imperfect, we're beneath God, and we have to humble ourselves before that. And this is the difference in these magicians, is there's no humbleness going on here. There is, I want to unlock it, I want to take the secrets, I want to manipulate human beings, I want to manipulate other people with my magic. We're going to create our own baby. We're going to create our moon child. We're going to create a womb. We're going to alter the DNA. And if we're going to choose who lives or dies, just like God. And we're actually going to build these data centers and create an AI God. We're gonna, like some system that sounds like the ultimate psychopath to me. And then when anyone attacks us for us, we'll call them evil and anti what. Meanwhile, we're trying to control the entire world and trap human beings in this kind of rigid world that they're creating. The world that they're creating is very rigid too. There's nothing awe-inspiring. There's nothing, it doesn't give anyone a sense of purpose. I don't feel like Crowley, by saying do what thou will, is giving someone a sense of purpose. Because it doesn't involve community. It doesn't involve taking care of each other. It just involves your will. And Crowley himself was never somebody who, he was a difficult person to get along with. Let's just put it that way. My dogs, they're being difficult with each other out in the hallway. I can hear them. We're going to continue with a few more videos here. I'm going to have to tie it up soon.
Her version of the same.
We're getting a little, because I had to restart the stream, we are getting a little bit into past the time that I want it to be here. Let's check out. Oh, this is a quick video, and then we'll check out the next one and we'll tie it up.
He's often referred to as the most wicked man to ever live. I'm curious about famous occultists. Do you know much about Aleister Crowley?
Oh yeah.
Did he have any role in World War I or II as far as occultism, you think?
Yeah, he was countering Hitler with his V symbol. Like Hitler had his swastika, was his archetypal sigil. And in the magic, this was Aleister Crowley worked with then it was OSS to create this.
So Crowley is from the English side?
Yeah, he's like an English occultist, and he's often referred to as the most wicked man to ever live.
And so he was the guy on the other side fighting Hitler.
And of course, guys, the irony of that is the same people who are funding the British side was funding Hitler. So there you have it. There's Crowley. He's doing battle with these signs, these sigils, these letters, and I'm sure he's using Kabbalah to do it. So it's kind of funny. You got all these occultists on the Hitler side. You got occultists on the English side. You've got Wiccans. They're all fighting it out with egregores and symbols. And the guys up on top of them, the bankers, are like, yeah, we already know who we want to win. So I don't know if that's a joke or how we can take that. But apparently, according to Alex Jones, Aleister Crowley was using a V symbol. Is that V for victory? Is that what that's about? Okay, we got one more video. One more, and then we're going to tie it up.
In a ritual where a person is being programmed to put in a Kabbalah template, they may take the person, tie them down, and pull their arm out of their shoulder socket, dislocate it, torture them in that state, and then put the bone back in. No drugs, no any painkillers, nothing. You're torturing the person, you are tearing their body apart, you're putting it back in. They may, for the heart, do something that causes the person to die. They actually kill them in the ritual. The heart stops. Then they use magic, demons, and maybe some actual pads, put it on a chest, bring the person back to life, and then continue the torture and the ritual. When they're doing yesod, the part that maps to the sex organs, for lack of better words, the kind of sexual tortures that they will do to a person or a child or a baby, 3 months old, are so graphic, I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but they are opening gates through torture and evil and bloodshed and the most heinous crimes against humanity in the process of installing this template into people for its power and its ability to have all kinds of mind control applications anchored into it and other things. In the world of sorcery, Kabbalah is at the top when it comes to powerful templates with which to work.
These are stories from victims that you personally don't do.
100%.
Okay, so I'm just going to add, if what he's saying is true, that's some high-level Kabbalah that none of you will ever have access to. You won't. And there's high-level Mason. There's it's going to be within these elite powers. The Jeffrey Epsteins and the weird stuff. To be fair, Crowley believed that if everybody knew their true will and adhered to their true will, everyone would get along fine. What's interesting is Crowley was always trying to manipulate everybody, and he didn't get along with everybody. So he was always trying to take over organizations. So he may have said he believed that, but I think his actions were a little bit different because he was very difficult. Yeah, he could have. They said Churchill used the V. Dorothy said Churchill's used the V, and maybe Crowley was the reason the V was used by Churchill and later mainstream. It could have been, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was constructed by some top ritual person in MI6 or whatever you call it, in these kind of, and remember, all these agencies are all globally linked. There's not like all these separate agencies. They're all linked together. So the V was obviously important. There are no such rituals or death in real Kabbalah. You don't know that because you would have to be a high-level Kabbalist. Just like I have Freemasons telling me there's no such thing. But they're not 33rd degree Masons. They're not high up in the Masons. You wouldn't know that unless you were a high-level Kabbalist in some elite Epstein-like weird shit. You would never know that. You're never going to know. Here's how religion goes. There's a version for the masses, and then there's the real version that they use for power. To do egregores, to create warring. Yeah, I realize that it's not based on the current stuff and it's old text. It actually emerged in medieval times, Kabbalah. But what they show you and what they tell you is completely different from what they're doing. And this goes for Freemasons and all of those kind of religions. There's a religion for the masses, and then there's secret stuff. You can go look at what John Dee was doing with Queen Elizabeth. He was promoting some type of form of Kabbalah before he knew it. There is a form of high-level Kabbalah, and they show the major ones after they're 35. They get into it after they're 35. You don't get into it when you're younger. And there is. I'm not going to discuss that one, and I'm not going to keep arguing with you about it. There is high levels. There's different religions that they show the masses. The stuff people read in the books is just, here, have some watered-down Sesame Street version. They're not going to come out and be like, hey, yeah, we torture and kill people. It's all good. They're they're going to tell you. Lyria said, I just realized that the fake unnatural Erd tree from the Elden Ring is this. Their tree is just a mimic of the natural tree of life, inorganic, so it can't bring forth life, only endless derivations. That's interesting. So we are looking at these type of, yeah, you may say it's an old tradition and not an organization, but organizations use it. And they use it in elite ways. You're never going to know it because they're not going to come out and lay it out for you. Nobody lays this stuff out. There's been too many people talking about this and saying, hey, look, I went under this kind of abuse. And I'm guaranteeing you're going to find the Rothschilds doing some creepy stuff. Creepy stuff that is tied into war, financial, manipulation. So I'm not going to sit here and argue with you on my show. All right, so to tie this up, we're just going to show you we're going to go back to the art. This is Crowley art. This is actually an artist. That's Austin Osman Spare. So you can see the difference in the art from somebody who's actually talented and has a spirit to his art, and somebody who was doing depraved stuff and not really talented at his art. He's a good mountaineer, he's a good rock climber, but Crowley and his ties, you seen that video where they talked about what he did with World War I, World War II. He was also, they say he was involved in both world wars, that he's doing magic. They understand how to manipulate these things. They understand egregores, witchcraft, like we talked about this before. The guy, Gerald Gardner, they were doing rituals against Hitler. I'm sure Hitler's people were doing rituals. They were doing lots of drugs. Actually, they were doing tons of drugs. Hitler did the same thing. They're meth soldiers trying to have the perfect human, this perfect idea. This exists all throughout all these tech bros. And honestly, I would say the Zionists are probably rendering Kabbalah in that way. You can do things for good or you can do things for bad. And when you have this concept that I must take matter and mold it and put the light into it, I'm the creator, you're inverting natural life. You're literally inverting from what's nature. You're trying to code nature and invert what's real, which is the basis: man, woman, create child, create civilization, create communities, create tribes, sex. And then you get all these neuroses from it. Sex magic, sex this, torture, whatever goes, create pods to grow babies in, contaminate the womb. I guarantee you these Zionists are grabbing hold of a lot of this and mixed with propaganda and campaigns about how they're going to take over the world. With Kabbalah and Noahide laws, they are dominating the sort of world front right now. And it's all bankers up at the top with a really crazy way. And it's hard to connect every dot because there's so many moving pieces and it's so compartmentalized. Like I said, people down at the bottom don't know what people at the top of the pyramid are doing. So they might know a few things, but they don't know what the banker is way at the top. And you just go look at the artwork, just Marina Abramovic, whatever her name is, the soul cooking, spirit cooking stuff, and the strangeness and the inversion that they like to show body parts and children body parts and children in weird torture positions. There's a picture of her with Rothschild behind a picture of Lucifer and Satan. That's the other thing. There's a lot of these guys that practice Hermetic Kabbalah. And there's my light going off. I've been talking too much. That's my cue to tie this up. Anyways, I could keep going on and on, but they're tying all these Kabbalahs, these two different kind of Kabbalahs in, And then you've got the Freemasons worshiping Lucifer. All based on what? All removed from reality. It's all removed from the basics of mother, father, child, life and community. The planet brings forth the goods, the harvest, and just the basics of reality. It is also conjectured and removed from it. And I think it's a trauma. And it's trauma because people are trying to control how the earth, how God, how whatever is the creative source brings this stuff about. They're trying to control it so they have power over everything. It's actually, the root of it is a huge, and I think magic's the same thing. The root of it is a huge insecurity in trying to control power, the money, the banking system, the food, military, what people think, when they'll have babies. And it can start off as something as simple as trying to manipulate with magic, trying to figure out the code to life with the DNA, with your inserting alphabets into acronyms to manipulate things and bring light into the body. I think it's very convoluted. And it's interesting that out of that possibly could have developed DNA code, genetic concepts for the internet, AI. It's also very unreal. It's very unnatural. It is not of the natural world, and it's not of the natural God order either. It's, like I said, some kind of horror Frankenstein story. And I'll leave it at that, guys. Next Sunday, it's going to be a later show. I have a guest on. We have Todd Wood coming back, and I believe it is going to be it's 5 p.m. my time, so I think that's 7 p.m. Eastern. The link is already up for the show, so you should be able to check it out. I think it is 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain Time, and 7 p.m. Eastern. But don't quote me on that. The link is already up on the channel. You can go check it out. You can go take a look. And he's coming to talk about serial killers and occult practices, which is a phenomenon of the 20th century, really. I mean, you see it everywhere. And then in May, I'm going to have Jared Nish on, and then I'm trying to get a talent scout who has worked with a lot of actresses in horror movies and stuff like that to come on and talk in June. So we'll see where that goes, guys. I got to get out of here. I don't have much time left. I've been rambling on way too long. And so just remember, observe, don't absorb. And make sure you don't wear the logos, the sigils. Don't put that stuff on you because you don't know what it's charged with. You don't know what these people's intentions are. But I bet you if it's at the elite and the top crest, it's no good. And so I'll see you next Sunday. Cheers.